Hey everyone, I'm Jenny and I blog at thedomesticwildflower.com and I'm sharing the 9 mistakes that beginners make when they learn how to can. Number 1, they think it is too hard. Beginners seem to think that canning is super complicated, like there's many complicated steps and that it's going to be really difficult for them to do. And I always say that I would rather can every single day for a month every day for a year than cook Thanksgiving dinner once. Canning is actually a pretty simple set of steps that I think anybody could do. And really, it's just a couple different pots of water if you're doing water bath canning, or just one pot that's cooking and one that's on the burner if you're doing steam canning. And I think it's a lot easier than most beginners think it will be, and it is a lot easier than cooking a big family dinner like Thanksgiving dinner. The second mistake that beginners make is they think they're going to make themselves sick. So canning is a science, and I think that beginners need to understand that it's a science and take comfort in that fact. It's not like a thing where we don't know why it works. We understand and know why it works, and you can take comfort in that and understand that it is very clear why canning is a safe practice for at-home cooks and at-home food preservers. You don't have to understand the science behind it. You don't have to do anything other than follow a trusted recipe. Okay? Canning is a science. And that is how you will know as a beginner and as an experienced preserver that you won't make yourself sick. You'll just follow the directions. The third mistake that I know that beginners make pretty often is that they think that they don't have all the equipment. So lots of beginners think about what they maybe imagine granny canning like, and they imagine like a kitchen full of pots and pans and tons of stuff going on, and they think like, holy cow, that was lots of pots and pans and lots of activity and tons of equipment, and they think, oh, no way do I have all that. Actually, canning is not as equipment intensive as you might think. You do need glass jars, and you do need a pot to cook the preserve in, but that would be like a pot that you probably would already own that you might cook. You might boil an artichoke in that, or you might already cook pasta in that, or if you cook anything at all, you could use one of those pots to cook your preserve in. And then for water bath canning, you would need one other larger pot, or you would need a steam canner if you were doing steam canning. And then a few, like 2 or 3 other very simple tools that are pretty inexpensive that you can get on Amazon or in a hardware store or in a grocery store or in Target, that are really inexpensive and easy to get, and that's it. It's not tons and tons of stuff. It's pretty low equipment, really. And I like that it's like low appliance. Like, you don't need anything that plugs into the wall. You can do this off the grid, living in an RV, in a yurt, on a sailboat. You can can in lots and lots of different places that you couldn't do other kinds of kitchen activities. Another mistake that beginners make is they think that any food in a glass jar is canning. Okay? Canning is the process where food is sealed in a glass jar and no air is getting in or out. And the food inside, if it's been water bath canned or steam canned, is at an acid level of 4.6 or greater, or more acidic. Okay? So if I just made like bacon jam, if I just cooked up some bacon jam and put it in a glass jar and put a lid on it, that's not necessarily canning. In fact, it probably isn't, because bacon is really low in acid and is, in fact, alkaline. That's not water bath canning at all, right? Fermenting sauerkraut and putting it in a glass jar, that's cool, but that's not canning. It's really hot on Pinterest to see pictures of, like, baked cheesecakes in glass jars. That's a thing. People do it. That's not canning, okay? Canning is preserving with an airtight seal in a glass jar. And the canning that I teach is water bath and steam canning. So the food inside there is at an acid level of 4.6 or greater. And that's actually a smaller number than 4.6, which is kind of confusing. But that's what canning is. It's not any of these other things, just with food that happens to be in a glass jar. Another mistake beginners make is that they think canning is a mystery. Canning is absolutely a science, and it is one that has been studied by scientists. Napoleon was one of the fathers of invention in this arena. He supposedly said that he would give a huge reward for anyone who could figure out how to feed his soldiers a field, right? An army marches on its stomach. So he apparently was one of the driving forces in discovering how to preserve foods in glass jars. And we know now lots more than we did then. And the way it works basically is that heat from either steam or boiling water forces air out of the glass jar, out of the salsa or the jam or the whatever you have in the glass jar, forces it out, and that creates a little vacuum that sucks the lid down, and it creates an airtight seal. At the same time, that heat kills any germies that might be inside. Because you are canning something that has a high acid level inside the jar, it's like kind of like the surface of Mars, let's say. It's inhospitable to life, okay? So there's no oxygen going in or out. It gets up to a really hot temperature, so it kills the germies. It's high in acid, so no little creatures can live anyway. There's like a trifecta of things going on that make it work. It's not a mystery. It's absolutely this triad of things working together. If one of those things is missing, it's not working. It's not canning, okay? One of the other mistakes that I see beginners make is they use an old recipe, okay? I love old things. I love all things grandma related. My grandma is one of the coolest ladies in the whole wide world, and anything of hers I think is awesome. But using one of my grandma's recipes would be a mistake if I didn't check it against a modern recipe. And by check it, I mean check the proportions of the recipe, specifically in regards to acid or ingredients like fruit and sugar and lemon juice and vinegar and those sorts of things, and processing time. So I'll speak first about acid. So nowadays, produce that we buy at the grocery store or purchase at the farmer's market or grow ourselves, even if we're completely organic and singing to our plants and whatever else, the produce that we grow and consume today is very different for a variety of reasons than the produce of 50 years ago, okay? Tomatoes now have been raised to withstand a great traveling distance and have a different flavor and have a uniform shape and different colors, and they're very different, right? An unintended consequence is that their acid level in tomatoes in particular is of a greater variability, for example. That means that a modern recipe will require you to add a little bit of a very important ingredient, probably lemon juice or citric acid or maybe vinegar, to acidify or make more acid whatever it is that you're canning. Pasta sauce or salsa or Bloody Mary mix or whatever you're making in this tomato specific example. The other problem with using an older recipe is that the processing times might be on the short side for safety's sake. Now, modern recipes require you to add 5 minutes for every 1,000 feet of elevation. So, for example, I live at 3,000 feet elevation. So that means that for every recipe, I add 15 minutes to the timer. Old canning books tell you to add 1 minute for every 1,000. And I don't know about you, but if I was just told to add 1 minute, I might skip that minute entirely, right? Maybe not, I don't know. But that's a pretty significant difference from 1 minute to 5 minutes. So those are the two reasons that using an old recipe is is a unsafe idea that I see beginners decide to do fairly often. The seventh reason is a beginner sometimes thinks that canning is a thing that you can cut corners in. Canning is not an activity that you can cut corners in. I'm a shortcut taker in many aspects of my life, but canning, because it is a science, canning is something that requires you to follow the directions and follow the recipe. It's not like those directions or recipes are hard or complicated, but you do need to follow them. So like in my previous example about following the number of minutes, it's pretty important that you do that. Because if you're going to bother to preserve jam or going to go through the effort of preserving your own food, you want the lid to seal and you want the product to be delicious and tasty and shelf stable for a whole year, and you want to be able to reap the rewards of your labor, right? So it's not an activity for corner cutters. You got to follow the directions. The eighth mistake that I see beginners make is that they think a sealed jar is just like an easy A. Oh, jar sealed, that means we're all good. No. If I filled up a canning jar halfway full with salsa and put a lid on it and put it in the water bath canning pot for 5 minutes and took it out, the lid would probably seal. It would probably seal. There would probably be enough heat to force out enough air that enough of a vacuum seal would be created that it would probably be sealed. That doesn't mean that the salsa inside followed a safe recipe for canning. That doesn't mean that I observed the safe headspace requirement of a canning recipe, because halfway full is not a safe headspace, by the way. That doesn't mean that I canned it or processed it for the specified amount of time. I'm just guessing 5 minutes is not long enough. I don't have a book open in front of me, but I don't think so. A sealed jar is not the one and only goal, right? And in fact, I think that's a pitfall for lots of newbies. They think, oh, it's sealed. Oh, I did everything right. No, you have to follow the directions, and that's how you know you did everything right. The ninth mistake, the final mistake I'll list today, that I see beginners make when they are learning how to can, is they think that they can learn alone. So it's true that you can learn how to can by yourself, you can learn by reading in a good cookbook, and you can learn alone. I taught myself by myself. I was pregnant and I stood sideways at the stove with my pregnant belly, and I called my mom and my grandma a lot, and I made a ton of stressful mistakes. And I want to help you learn how to can the fast and easy way. I don't want you to have to stand sideways or forwards and be stressed out and wondering if you're doing it all right. And I want you to enroll in my completely free Canning Basics course. It's an email course that is just a few days long, and it gives you tons of valuable information that will get you started on the right foot. And it includes a ton of different, I think there's 7 free printables that you could have right next to you at the stove. There's a stove diagram that shows you where to put what pot, which actually is very helpful. Very helpful to know where to put what. There's an acid and canning guide. So maybe if you've canned a couple times or seen it done once or twice and want to learn a little bit more about, like, how does this even work? What am I even doing here? The acid and canning guide can be really fun for learning which produce items you can swap out based on their acid level. So I took the acid data from the USDA website and I made it into an easy to read chart. There's a canning log to help you keep track of canning season, like which recipes you liked and why and how many jars it yielded. I created a checklist to help you get started with the equipment collection, which kinds of pots and pans and the number of jars and lids and rings. And there's more awesome, great stuff inside the free course, and I want to see you sign up right now.